Sahanavavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Divi Bhumau Tatha Kashe Bahirantascha Me Vibhuhu Yo Vibhatyavabhasatma Tasmai Sarvatmane Namaha. A very peculiar thing today that we are going into what is called as the Arjuna Upakhyanam, the chapter which is connected with the Arjuna. Historically speaking, Rama and Vasistha, they were there around 7,000-8,000 years ago, whereas Arjuna and Krishna conversation in Bhagavad Gita has taken place 5,100 years ago. How can that Arjuna episode be remembered by Vasistha to Rama, which not yet happened? Another 2,000 years later, it is supposed to happen. So these kind of things are there in Yoga Vasistha. That is the reason why I was saying that what we need to look at Yoga Vasistha is that the message, what Vasistha wanted to convey to Rama and what he conveyed to Rama, that message is true. Only thing is, by the time that Yoga Vasistha has been written, by few thousand years later, or maybe that over a period of time, people started adding the kind of events, happenings that were there from the day-to-day life in order to support the idea, in order to support the philosophy that Vasistha told Rama. And it is really very useful that way, because there is an anecdote, there is a situation that's available to see that how it can really convey the same kind of message. Another very important aspect is that the time is not a very big significant thing as long as the message becomes important. That's why we have immortalized people like Rama and Krishna or Buddha, though they lived so long time ago, or Shankaracharya, but we immortalize them in such a way that they're always living all the time. They never die. So their stories always will continue, always will be referred to. So this is how that these ideas are something which is immortalized ideas, and the events are indeed just something which is picked up and given it. But the message is something which is very important. And in this message that he gives to Vasistha gives to Rama about Arjuna's story, there is a new light that can be thrown onto that Arjuna's relationship with Krishna. One very important aspect is that Arjuna has been one of the 5 Pandavas, and he happened to be the chief of the leader of the army. And then he led the whole Pandavas for victory. This is what normally that we understand. Not only that, even the scholars understand that way, but and also that right from the beginning that everybody conceives that Arjuna was the most favorite of the Pandavas, both in terms of his obedience and his dedication to the elders. All those things, when you look at it, Bhishma was fond of Arjuna. Vidura was fond of Arjuna. So like that, you could see that Arjuna was the fond child of everybody. As he grows up also, that Draupadi, though she was the wife of all the 5 Pancha Pandavas, but she had a special liking for Arjuna. Not because that Arjuna has won her literally by the Matsyantra, but very important thing is that somehow the connection between Arjuna and Draupadi was so extraordinary. That's one of the reasons why whenever Draupadi was in trouble, one person she would immediately rush to was Arjuna, with an idea that he would take care of issues. Whether it is Pandava, whether it is Bhima or Yudhishthira, when they have anything to consult, Arjuna was the main person that they would consult to. So Arjuna seemed to be a very special person in the whole of Mahabharata out of all the Pandavas. But and another thing is that Krishna sends Arjuna to go for in Indraloka and all those things and get all the astras and the shastras. So all that he has done, it looks like that Krishna is preparing Arjuna for the war so much. Now, the bondage between the Krishna and Arjuna seem to be absolutely close and unbelievably close. That means you can't even expect anything so closer than these two people who are there, Arjuna and Krishna, particularly in the battlefield, that you could see that Krishna preferred to be a charioteer, and Arjuna wanted him to steer him, be with him all the time. That itself shows that the connection relation between them. And this is what Yoga Vasistha brings about, a very beautiful concept in this Arjuna Upakhyanam. And I will just like to elaborate that one. The idea is that in Taittiriya Upanishad, he says that Brahman that is there, consciousness which is there, divides itself into the food and the hunger. Anna, annadaha, bhavati. That means it becomes food and the hunger. When you look at it, why these two are connected? Because they're absolutely connected. Nothing else can directly connect with your hunger other than the food. Food is the one which has direct connection with the hunger, and food is the one which can really appease this hunger, take care of this hunger. These two are absolutely, totally interconnected. It's like the way that we have the joint where the male and female coupling that we try to put together. They're absolutely fitting and they have to be together like that. So this is what basically Anna and Annadaha, the food and hunger, they are the ways that it has been divided, and then that is what is put together. In fact, colloquially also, that in culture we say that if you are hungry, it means that there is food for you. Very simple statement that our grandmothers used to say, that the very fact that you are hungry, which means that there is food. That, in other words, they always implied that there will be somewhere some food will be there for you. Everybody gets that food. But then, very important idea, philosophical idea behind it is that hunger and food, they're absolutely connected. That is the idea. And that same idea also was brought about in our culture, Sanatana Dharma, in such a way that you prepare a lot of food and then cooked food and then serve to people. And every time that you are taking food, that you come out of the house, look around if anybody is there who is hungry, and then give him the food. And in fact, they say that nobody should die out of hunger. In fact, there's one incident that happened in one of the king's place. A young man died when in Raghu Maharaja time. Raghuvamsha it comes, and then he says, the king is sitting there on the throne, and then the messenger comes there, and the king casually asks that, is everybody happy? Is everybody safe? Is everybody good? He said, everybody is fine, everybody is good, and then there are no calamities. But one fellow died in the kingdom, in the capital, one fellow died. He said, what? A fellow died? And how old is he? He said, he's a young fellow. He's 25 years. Immediately the king was alarmed. He said that, does he have any infection or anything like that, any injury, any snake bite? He said, none of these things. None of these things, but then how did he die? Because young people cannot die. There's no infection, nothing like that. No, because he died of hunger. He didn't have food. Oh my God. A young fellow died of hunger and you take it so casually? You take it so casually and then you don't even report that? And then Raghu Maharaj became very serious and he said that a young man cannot die. If he dies out of hunger, that means the blame should go to the king. The king is somebody who should provide the means to earn food for any youngster. And not only that, the kingdom should have that kind of a culture. Anybody who comes in hunger, you should serve him food. And this is what is this culture. Nakanchana vasatam pratyachakshita tadvratam. Yakaya cha vidayat bhafannam prapnuyat tadvratam. By whatever way that you try to produce cooked food and then serve the food to the people. And that culture, even till today, maintained in the villages in the Sanatana Dharma in our culture. You go to villages, there is somebody or the other is open doors to see that they serve food to you. The moment you have to ask, you don't even have to beg for or anything like that. In fact, they said that food is not something that you beg for. You just ask and then they will give you. And there are a couple of incidents like that. When there was those days when I was in the engineering college, second year or third year, like that, a group of us, we were traveling in a remote village of Madhya Pradesh. The place did not see any growth or any development. Absolutely no culture, none, no nothing, civilization entered into that place. And we were walking at that place. Just to give an idea that how remote that place was, that the children, they came running to me and they saw the wristwatch on my hand and then said, "What is this?" I said, "This is watch." And I said, "What is this watch for?" He said, "It shows time." Then they asked, "What do you mean by time?" Samay call, time. What do you mean by time? Now I was thinking that in what way I can convey them to their knowledge. I said that this is something which provides the knowledge about the sun movement, where the sun is, where the sun sets, and all that. Then he looked at me with wonder. He said, "Do you have something like that on the wrist to say where the sun is? Can you not see the sun on the head?" So see how simple that they are, how innocent that they are. That's the kind of village that we went. And then we were hungry. It was afternoon. And then we started looking for, is there any place where we can get food? Then somebody was passerby. He said, "Why do you say like that? You go to the head of the village and say that you are visiting this place. And then he will provide you food." Wow. And we went to his place and then he was just sitting there on the uh, front veranda of the house. And then we said that we have come here, three of us, and then we are hungry. And then that person who introduced that, "Now you said you go to the river, Shipra river, and then take bath and then come back. By that time, that food will be ready for you." Because there was no response from anybody. So we just directly went there and Shipra river that we took bath. It was hot sun, like a hot day. Therefore, we really required a bath. After that, we came back there and we saw that that there were plates ready and then seats were ready so that you could sit down and eat. The food was ready in the plate. Already somebody is serving that hot food for us. So even in this villages and anywhere that you don't even know who is, the food is served. That means hunger and food, they're absolutely connected. Annavan annadau bhavati. Anna and annada, they are the things which are connected. The hunger and the food, they are connected. Similarly, the rest and the tiredness, they are interconnected. So Brahman becomes the one Brahman becomes duality, and the duality is that food and hunger. And then this is what the transaction takes place. The whole transaction, which is supposed to be the manifested reality. What is the essential quality of this world? Creation. The essential creation quality of the creation, property of the creation is that it constantly keeps acting. This is what Krishna said in Bhagavad Gita. Karyate havashak karma. The karma has to go on. And that is where basically this karma here goes on, is the food and hunger, they're coming together so that it takes care of the hunger. But then your food should support to take care of hunger, not anything else, not beyond that. Very seldom that we stop at the level of appeasing the hunger. That's one of the reasons we have all kinds of problems. So God has provided food for everybody, hunger, need, but then He doesn't have food for the greed. And that much we need to give. And this Anna, Annadav, is the way that separation takes place. Like that. That is the beginning. And similarly, exhalation, inhalation, they are the two aspects that are created. Darkness and the light, day and night, they are created like that. So it looks to be divided into two is the way that first change takes place, and from that the whole creation goes on. This is what is the concept of Yoga Vasistha, that concept that is given by Taittiriya Upanishad. And that's what Yoga Vasistha brings about that here also, saying that what is so absolutely connected, like the way that the food and hunger, here like that, the same Brahman, same consciousness has become these two, separated into two. One is Krishna and the other is Arjuna. So look at the connection that is given. As if Krishna is born for the sake of Arjuna, and Arjuna is made for the sake of meeting with the Krishna. And what is that extraordinary knowledge that comes between Krishna and Arjuna joining is this Bhagavad Gita. So therefore, this Bhagavad Gita is something which is so extraordinary, seem to be like the way that of the all mountains that are there in the Himalayas, the peak, Everest, is the one which is like this Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita, why is it like that? Because it is supposed to create a basis, foundation for the whole, the dharma that's going to happen in the next several thousands of years. So Mahabharata war is not like any other war, and characters like Krishna and Arjuna are not like an accidental, but they are something who are made for each other. They came for this particular purpose. An incident was only Mahabharata war, but the discussion that went on into Bhagavad Gita is something which is very extraordinary. That's why he says that Arjuna was required that clarification, and which Krishna is supposed to give. And once that clarification is given, then Arjuna embarks on his mission of life, and that's what is establishing dharma. So this is the purpose for which that this whole Arjuna Krishna episode has taken place. That's what Yoga Vasistha gives the idea. Arjuna Upakhyanam, the story of Arjuna, 239 page. Sri Rama Vacha, Puryashtaka Swayam Swarupam Me Bhagavan Kidrusham Vadaha. What is this Puryashtakam? Puri Ashtakam. Revered sir, what kind of a natural characteristics of Puryashtaka are the eightfold? Puri means city and Ashtaka means eight. It's a eightfold city. Tell me, what is that? And Vasistha now replies to him saying that Anadyantam Jagad Bijam Yad Brahmasmi Yad Brahmasti Niramayam Tadeva Kalana Yuktam Atra Jiva. It is that Brahman, or the Supreme Spirit, which is without beginning, which is the seed, origin of this world, and untainted, is alone considered here as Jiva, the individual soul, when endowed with the impulse to act, and when endowed with the grasping of the space and time. Kalana yuktam atra jiva iti smritaha. So anadyantam jagad bijam. That means the seed of the whole creation world, and that's what is the consciousness. Anadi, adi antam na. That means to say there is no beginning, there is no end for this Brahman, Jagad Bijam, Yad Brahmasmi, Brahmasti Niramayam. Niramayam. Amaya is something which is tainted. Niramayam. It can never be touched, it can never be tainted, it can never be attached. Tadeva Kalana Yuktam, and that same seed world is manifested itself, sprouted, endowed with the impulse to act. Atra Jiva iti smritaha, with the reckoning of the space and time, and this is considered as Jiva. So that means to say, at the Jiva level, it is completely pure, it cannot be tainted, and there is no beginning or end to the Jiva. It's continuously there. If you identify yourself with the Jiva, then there is no question of death for you. It is continuously being there behind it. So, Sajivaha Kalu Dehesmin Chinoti Spandane Sputam Aham Bhavat Ahankaro Mananat Manavuchate Bodha Nishchayate Buddhihi Indradrosham Tadendriyam Deha Bhavanaya Deho Ghatana Ghata Bhavanaya Ghataha. Now that Jiva, the individual soul, indeed gathers experiences and moves manifestly in this body. It is called as ahamkara, the ego, on account of the feeling of I. The I is born, and then manas, the mananaha, manas, the mind, because of thinking, buddhi or the intellect, on account of certainty of knowledge and understanding. So also it is called as the origin faculty of sense from the view of the presiding deity. It is the body on account of the ideation of the body, the pot, due to the conception of the pot. Anyway, these are actually the five. See, what happens is that the jiva has become ahankara, that means condensed itself into that one simple individual. That individuation is what is called as ahankara or asmita, whatever that you call it. And then there are these activities which are going on inside. And what are those activities? In order to interact with the world outside, that there is one thing that is connecting with the world outside directly, and these are the senses. The only way that you can interact with the world, you can mix with the world, is through your senses. Without the sense input, that you don't have anything to do with the world outside. And that also that you do not interact everything in this world outside. It's only what the senses will bring you information to you, and that's what you get it. And all this information, whether it is coming through the eyes, through the ears, different means that are there, but all those things are, who is that doing all these things? The senses, according to the Vedanta, they are not separate. They are nothing but the tentacles of the mind itself. So it is the mind whose tentacles are all these things. Therefore, mind is not separate. Mind is something which is the input from all these senses. Now, there is another thing also very important, is that it is this consciousness which is a particular activity which is doing what we call it as mind. A thinking activity, a collecting the ideas activity is what we call it as mind. Gathering all the information called as mind. It is like the way that the same prana that's there within us, depending upon type of activities, we call it as different prana. Like when it is only moving in the upward direction, then we call it as udana. When it is moving only in the downward direction, we call it as apana. But prana itself is not separate, different. They are no different. But that kind of an activity does, because of that, it is what we call it as. Like the way that we say energy means everything. But it manifests through or electricity, we say, is the same thing. But when it comes through the light bulb, then it becomes like a light. When it comes through the machine, it comes like a motion. Something else is somewhere else. Or when the refrigerator cools down. So all these things are different manifestations of same thing called as electricity. That's the reason why when the light is gone, then we say that electricity is gone. When the fridge stopped, we say electricity has stopped. So that means to say it is nothing but electricity which has stopped. The same way that all these senses are different activities of the same center called as mind. Mind gathers all this information, and not only the informations of input from the senses, but also similarly that we have information that's there inside. It picks up that information. That's all the thing. But then behind that, there is another activity that goes on, and that activity is continuously putting them into again the various bins. This is right, this is wrong, this is yellow, this is not yellow, this is green, this is blue. This kind of a work that is being done, putting them into various bins and various compartments, and then work with that. And this thinking and doing all this kind of is the thing what is called as the intellect. Intellectual activity. Analyzing is what the intellectual activity. The first one is that gathering the information is one activity. And second thing is analyzing is an activity. But after analysis, there is something which is holding that information. That's what is called as the memory. That's also another activity. There is no center or anything like that. These are all purely the activities that are there within us. And man is nothing but these activities. And all these activities are owned by one person. And that's also another owning activity. And that owning activity is what is called as ahankara. So therefore, all these things that are there are nothing but different activities which are going on inside, both in terms of prana is one side, on the other side chitta is one side, and chitta has all these four different activities. Manas, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, these are the things that are there. And also it is called as the organ of sense, uh, uh, preceding deity. It is the body on account of the view of the ideation of the body, and the part became the concept of the five organs of knowledge and the five organs of action and the internal organs, mind, intellect, ego, and chitta. The internal organs are supposed to be presiding over, and by this own Niyantra, the ruler, according to the traditional text, the ruler is the individual consciousness having the concerned experience and symbolizing the role. What happens is that it is the Jivatma who is the ruler. You are the Jivatma, you are the owner of it. And you work all these things as there are servants in your hand, or the way that there are various activities are being happening. There is no one behind it. So therefore, all these things which are called as the pranas, that are five elements that are there, plus manasu, buddhi, chitta, these are the three things that are there. This is supposed to be 8. And therefore, it is called as Ashtakam. Ashtakam means 8. So Puri Ashtaka Swarupa one Kidrusham Tada. Show me that what is this Puri Ashtakam. 8 different organs together, and then this is Ashtaka. Where this ego, he puts it as Asmita and Ahankara together away, and all other things that are there, he put them together as 8 different Ashtaka. Therefore, it is called as Ashtaka. And then Puri Ashtakam. This Puri is made out of these 8 different aspects of it. Now, when you look at it, all the activities that you do it, either in the form of Ahankara or the Asmita, it's with these 5 different faculties or the 5 different activities that are there inside. You're trying to put together, and that's what all your activity is. So, Sakshitva Adya Abhipatini. Abhipatini. So now these 5 different Jnanendriyas, Karmendriyas, or Jnanendriyas, and also these 3 different mental faculties put together, these Puri Ashtakam, all those things, how do they work? And that is the reason why he separated the ego from that. Asmita or Ahankara is separated from that. Otherwise, Antakaranas are the 4 normally what we think of. And out of these 4 Antakaranas, one of the Antakarana is an Ahankara. Now he separates that out and says that Ahankara has these 3 aspects of it. When he says 3 aspects of it, it is the Asmita aspect of it has these 3 aspects of it, which is Jnatva, that is Jnatrutva, and third is the Kartrutva, the doer, and the third one is the Bhoktrutva, is the one who is experiencer. So Jnatrutva, Kartrutva, Bhoktrutva, the doer, and first of all the identifier, the second thing is the doer, and third is the experiencer, Bhoktrutva. But beyond all these 3 things, now he brings about the 4th one, which is called as Sakshi. Sakshitvam Abhipatini. So now the 4th quality, 4th one, is a witness. And these are all the 4 different things that are there. Eightfold city consists of Manas, mind, Ahankara, ego, Buddhi, and the 5 Tanmatras, the 5 senses that are there. The sound, touch, form, taste, and the smell, all these things. So this is what is the Puri Ashtakam. And this is how basically he recognizes that this Puri Ashtakam works in the form of Kartrutva, Bhoktrutva, Jnatrutva, and above all these things, there is one thing called as the Sakshitvam. That means that he is an observer. And this is something which is very important for us, that these 3 also, Kartrutva, Bhoktrutva, Jnatrutva, they are very important for us. Like, for example, if the activity has to be done, you have to become the doer of that activity so that you do it. If you do not do it, the activity will not be done. Similarly, whatever that experience that you have to own that experience. You cannot deny that experience. It's very important. If we did not have the idea of that experience, then the hard, cold, and this and that, all these things would go away from our perception. Then what happens is that you will not survive. Anything can disturb you. Like, for example, fire is burning you from one side, and you don't even perceive that the fire is burning. You don't have that idea of the bhoktrutva, experiencer. Similarly, jnatrutva, identifier. This is such a beautiful thing that is said that the species maintenance is because of this jnatrutva, because that they have this jnana, jnatru, and jnatva. That means the knower, and because of that, the identifier. Because of that, that the species maintenance takes place. Like, for example, even any species that you say in this creation, as earlier I said, the way that the food and hunger, the same way that the male and female species are created by the nature itself. That's how the creation takes place. It splits and then joining together, then it brings about the further creation, further creation. It is like that. You don't even notice that it's happening, but the way that how beautifully that even in the flowers, the pollen that is there through which that this a cross fertilization takes place in the case of everything in this universe, and that's how the creation takes place. And the creation has these two aspects of it. And look at all the species. Everywhere these two aspects is there. Joining them together is there. It's not exclusive for man, for human being. It's for every species that is there. But what happens is that it's as important, as close to, as the hunger, thirst, and all those things that are there, the sleep, rest, and fear, like that is also there. That's what Bhartrahari says. Now, all these things that are there in human being, hunger and thirst and all those things, we need to take care of it. Immediately we need it. But this one aspect of it, that is the gender aspect of it, or the experience, that one need not have it. Whole lifetime one can skip from that. It's not that critical and important. Yes, it's very prominent, and that's why the whole world has given such a great importance, particularly in the case of human being. In the case of other species, that there is a self-control, self-regulation in them. They don't necessarily exceed in that. But human being is somebody who can exceed, who can injure himself in the whole process. If he should not injure himself, therefore, it means that we should have a discriminatory faculty that's there behind it. So therefore, that these two things are there, and this is very much important that we identify. And a particular time, see, as a child, he may not have any cognition of that, but the child grows to certain age, immediately the cognition comes, attraction for the opposite gender comes, and then there is a proper selection, this and that. We should see that how you can create an ideal combination in the society. That's very important, and that's why it is given. So all these things are basically identification and experience, and then you have to do it. The doing aspect is there. Like, for example, if I have to maintain my body, I need to do the exercise. I cannot sit in front of the television and play a exercise channel on the television and then sit down on a couch and eat potato chips. Then nothing will happen to me. I have to get up and do the exercise. Without my doing, nothing will happen to me. So therefore, this kartrutva is something which is very important. God has given us that kartrutva. That's why I always say that God has given us legs to walk. If you don't walk the legs, then the legs become disused. And then later on, you may have to use a wheelchair because that you have not used your legs. Similarly, your hands, they're there to do the exercise. If you don't exercise, the hands get disused. So that means to say this kartrutva is something which is very important. So jnasya, jnatva, that means identifier, and then kartrutva, the doer, and bhoktrutva, That means one who experiences. Somewhere it is bhoktatva is bhoga is connected with that is enjoyer. But for me, the feeling of bhoktatva meaning is that it is experiencer. That means just something is hot, something is cold, something is good, something is this is tasty, this is not tasty. I cannot deny. Just because somebody else said that, I cannot deny that because it's our own experience. And our own experience, we have to give value for that. It's my own experience. So therefore, you cannot deny this idea called as the bhoktrutva. So this has to be there. You know what happens in Center Prashanti, that they talk about, give a beautiful talk about sattvic ahara, this and that, rajasic and tamasic. And when the question of rajasic comes, yes, spicy, this, that, and sattvika is supposed to be less spicy, non-spicy, all these things they say. And for somebody who, and tamasic is something which is dull, does not have any taste, blah, 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 all kinds of things is supposed to be tamasic ahara. But then somebody who comes from the hot climate, like in Andhra Pradesh, and then for him, the food that he eats doesn't have any spice at all because the level of spice he is used to is something different from what is there. So he says very bland, and many times even he complains saying that this is a very tamasic food because it does not have any taste in that. It's tamasic food. Whereas a person who comes from a cold climate like Scandinavian country, he says that, wow, doc, you said sattvic food. Is this sattvic food? So much of spice that is there. Look at me, I am sweating. But poor kitchen people, they say, no, this is sattvic food only. They try to argue with that. It's your experience. You cannot deny your experience. Therefore, it's purely your own experience that makes you what is right for you, what is wrong for you. So therefore, these two things are, all these three things, kartrutva, bhoktritva, that helps you to survive. And survive who? Survive not the sense, but the one behind that. And that's what is supposed to be the jivatma or the consciousness. In fact, it is the senses are not enjoying the object. The eyes are not seeing. It's not the tongue which is tasting, but it is the consciousness, jivatma, which is tasting through the tongue. It uses the tongue as only a means to get the taste. Similarly, eyes it uses as only the instruments, windows through which that it can see the world. But who sees is this consciousness. It sees the jivatma that is there, who enjoys all those things. The jivatma who is looking at all those things. But this jivatma who is not doing all these kind of things deep inside, he is only that, and that's what is supposed to be the idea called as the sakshi. That means I don't involve into the activity, into the senses, but without senses I be behind, and the sense is doing its own work, whatever it is doing, I am standing behind it. We can separate it. This is a very interesting concept that we have. The sakshi is supposed to be in English that we can translate as witness, observer. Generally, observer is somebody who the other language concept is that observer is somebody who is not emotionally involved in this particular thing. He's totally free from that. He has no connection with that. But then in the Indian philosophy, you cannot be observer to something else. You can only observer for yourself. You can only be a witness for yourself. But in the world language, you cannot be a witness for yourself. Like, for example, did you steal that thing? He said, no, I have not stolen it. Do you have any observer? Do you have any witness for that? He said, I'm the witness. They won't accept it. Court will not accept. You have to get somebody as a witness who is not even connected with you. No association with that. So there, in the world outside, the witness is not for yourself. It is for the world outside. But whereas in Vedanta, the witness is for yourself, oneself. I can only be witness for myself. I can only watch myself. So, and this we need to practice. This we can develop it ourselves. Any activity that we do, don't be part of the activity, but withdraw from that activity. Not that you stop the activity. Activity is going on, but you just become an observer standing behind it. The activity is going on. Swami Ram Tirtha, he was there in USA, and then he was staying in some guest house. And then when he came back home, that he was laughing. And then they asked Swami Ramatita, Rama, what has happened? What is that you are laughing? Oh, today I've seen such an exciting event. I said, what is that exciting event that you have seen? The Rama was walking on the street, and then people chased him, and then they started throwing eggs at him and all that. And I was enjoying it. Then they were confused. They said, who are you talking about? I said, Rama is standing. I said, yeah, Rama is standing. That means that they were putting eggs on you and then they were chasing you. He said, no, I was watching. And then they were chasing this Rama who is there. So that means he could really easily identify himself with Sakshi and then be not one with the object outside. Even for him, this body is also an object, senses are an object. So that's why when we say that, that means a witness, an observer, we say that observer does not observe through the eyes that is supposed to be your physical eyes. He does not hear from the physical ears, and is something which is there inside. And his touch, his feeling, and everything is deep inside. And that is a subtler aspect of it. It's not through the senses. And that subtle aspect of whatever that is there, when you look at it, and there it belongs to that particular subtle aspect, is this love, compassion, all those things. So therefore, what we call it as emotion, actually in Indian Sanatana Dharma, it is called as the bhavana. The bhavana belongs to that witness. Bhavana does not belong to the intellect. Intellect is something which analyzes and all those things. It's much later, whereas bhavana is something which is behind, and that belongs to the witness. You take up the position of a bhavana, you become very easily that witness of it. Yeshatraya swabhavatma janaihi puryashtakam smrutah jnatva katrutva bhoktrutva sakshitva abhipatini. So that means all these things are formed. Ya samvid jiva ityukta tadya puryashtakam vidu puryashtaka vasenaiva swapnat swapnantaram yatha asatyameva pashyanti jana tadvat idam jagat. Only that pure consciousness, that jivatma or the samvit, which is described as a jiva or the individual soul, is known as the Eightfold City. Only on account of this Eightfold City, people see this world just as they see what is unreal from one dream to another dream. So just as they see what is unreal from one and dream to another dream. You are somebody who is a witness and witness of the dream. Are we not witness of our dream? We in the night that we have a whole lot of dream. Many times, even the day also, people have dream. It's nothing to do with reality in the world outside. But then there, so like the way that you can free yourself from that dream world as an observer, the same way, this manifest world outside also, that you can become an observer. So, and this pure consciousness ya samvit jiva ityukta tadvi puryashtakam vidu puryashtaka vashenaiva swapnat swapnantaram yatha asatyameva pashyanti janaha tadvatidam jatu. Asatyameva pashyanti. They can recognize the way that this world becomes an unreal for you, because that they are identified with themselves, with the Sakshi. And Arjuna vidya nirdukham sukham kshepa jivitam yamaha karishyate tapo damanat papashankaya mahiyam tena nirandhra bhutaihi martyaihi amrutyubhi bharena paribhutangi harim sharanameshwati harihi dehadvaye natha bhumo avatarishyati. Spend the duration of your life happily from sorrow, just as Arjuna, the way that Arjuna spent his life without any sorrow. Yama, the god of death, will do penance because of the doubt of accrual of sin due to punishment meted out by him. Because of that, this earth becoming dense with mortal beings, free from death and afflicted by the burden will take refuge in Hari for Lord Vishnu and the protector god. Then Lord Hari will incarnate, descend on the earth with a pair of bodies, Krishna and Arjuna. Now, this is something which is very unique concept that it is there. The more and more people get involved into the activities in the world outside without forgetting, without remembering that they are the consciousness, but they're only the body. See, consciousness is something who is a witness. And then witness does not have any particular thing as negative, positive, right and wrong, and all that. He is a witness. If you are a witness for the good, bad, you are also a witness for the good. Neither you are good nor you are bad, but then you are a witness. Sakshi is somebody who does not have the pairs of opposite. The more and more that people are established in that Sakshi, the less and less that they have attachment with the world outside. Therefore, that they do not carry the vasana samskaras along with them. So, therefore, if you do not have those vasanas and samskaras behind it hanging on you, then you live in this world. You live always happily. You live without any ups and downs. You live constantly. It should not make not even a bit of iota of difference in you. This is what Vasistha says to, this is what Vasistha tells Rama. And this is what you can see Rama later on exhibiting that particular quality. When he was supposed to be coronated, the message goes, and then the preparations were going on. Rama was also busy with those preparations that he was getting coronated. And then suddenly the summon comes from his mother, Kaikeyi, that he was supposed to visit Kaikeyi, her father's place. So he went there. While going there, he saw that in the passage somewhere in one hall, all these various arrangements were kept for the coronation for the next day. Coronation is not a small thing. It has got so many special things that are there. And Rama, while passing through that particular place, he felt a kind of a joy in him that tomorrow all these things will be decorated on him. And then he had that smile. But respect is there because after all, it is the king's. It's not his, it's king's. Then he went to father's place, he went to mother's place, and then there that he was asked that he should go to the forest for 14 years. He readily accepted and came out and the kingdom is given to his younger brother, that is Bharata. And then they have sent words to see Bharata to come. And then Rama, while he came out of that, because he has agreed, he was peaceful in his mind, he came out and then he saw the same things that were there supposed to be decorated for the king. He bows down in front of him, in front of all those things, because it is now, he is not the king. His brother is the king. So therefore, he offers his respects for that. He doesn't have a feeling that I have lost and then I'm not given this. What a wonderful thing that he has taken. Whether it is given to him or taken away from him, both these things are equal. And that same thing he tells later on also. When the Bharata comes to his kingdom and Bharata says that he says all kinds of words about his dad. That dad asked you to go to the forest and this is something which his dad has done bad, all those things. Rama stops him halfway, says that, Bharata, you cannot say all those things. Negative things about your dad. Dad is somebody who is extraordinary. And Rama says, it is the dad who told that I should be coronated. And dad himself told me that to go to the forest. So when he says that I should be coronated, and I feel joyful, and he says I go to the forest, and dad is somebody extraordinary, and he says that I should go to the forest, then the same dad becomes bad. What do you say like that? That is the same. And there was a purpose in asking me to take over the kingdom, but there is a purpose in asking me to go to the forest. You don't know that. I don't know it. We don't know it. There must be so many things that's going on behind it. So it's all for the good sake of the good. So this is what one could say. Take it, that both these things are equal. And when you take both these things are equal, then what happens is that you become a Sakshi. Sakshi does not have what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. Sakshi is only just who is a witness for whatever that is there. Nirdukham sukham shepayaha jivitam Arjuna Vidhi Nirdukham Sukham Kshepaya Jivitam Yamaha Karishyate Tapodama. This is a very important idea that he says that when the people are caught up in the good and bad, right and wrong, opposite, this I like, this I don't like, all these things will build up desires in them. All these things will build up within them the greed and also the clinging to the life, abhinivesha, all these things are built up along with these things. So when these things are built up naturally, that people keep taking birth again and again because that they are filled with that vasana, samskara, and desires. So therefore they keep coming, and the more and more that they come, it says that it's a great lot of activity for Yama to take care of it. He does not have any respite. Whereas if they are free from that, if they are given the knowledge that both these things are equal and you be peaceful, you become Sakshi, you identify yourself with the Sakshi, or you identify yourself with the Sthita Prajna, then where is the question of that you are wanting to come back again, that you do not want to come back. So if the less and less people come back onto the earth, then it is less burden on the Yama. So it's a very beautiful pun that he uses that here, is that Arjuna and Krishna, they came, and that's what Brahman has become, Arjuna and Krishna, and they discussed and then raised above to the level of where they have vasana, samskaras, all those things are removed. They're purely existing in this world, mere existence that is there in this world. Then more and more people listen to it, learn to it, and understand it, then less and less people will come back. So, Rama, this is the reason, the way that you also have to create that kind of a life, what Arjuna has created, so that it helps the god of Yama to see that yes, he can rest, he can be peaceful, he doesn't have to work so hard. That's what he says, that Yamaha karishyate tapo damanat papashankaya mahipatena nirandhya murtha martyaihi amrutyubhihi. Spending the duration of your life happily, free from sorrow, just as Arjuna, Yama, the god of death, will do penance because of this doubt of uh, accrual of sin due to punishment. He doesn't have any more accrual of punishment. He continuously has to give the punishment, and that gives him so much of this thing. He can be free from that, becomes dense with the. So the because of that, this earth becomes dense with the mortal beings, free from death and afflicted by the burden. Will take refuge in Hari and Lord Vishnu, the protector of God, and then Lord Hari will incarnate descend, and or descend on the earth with a pair of bodies, Krishna and Arjuna. So when you do that, you become like the way that somebody who can give freedom from the people. And that's what Krishna and Arjuna discussed in it. So that's how Krishna's story, Arjuna's story comes into the picture. This why it is called as Arjuna's story, because Arjuna needed that journey from ignorance to knowledge. So Vasudeva Arjuna's cheti tatha yuddhe upasthite Arjunaha swajanat shatru drushthairapi vishannatam. See, if you look at the old gross Bhagavad Gita in front of you, this is where this Dvandva is there so much. It's my people and the enemies. And that's what Dhritarashtra says, Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva. Whereas Krishna, what he teaches in Bhagavad Gita is that there is nothing like my people, they're like enemies or anything like that. They're only people who are there, Swajanan Shatrun Drishtaishyapi Vishannatam. Then the whole battle between Krishna and Arjuna, his kinsmen, take place. Arjuna, seeing his kinsmen standing as enemies, will fall into despondency. Bodhayishyati tam devam praptakaryai siddhyate atmahya anadi madhyantaha hate dehe nahanyati shashvatopyam agno nitye janma mrityu vivarjitam. O God Krishna, the Lord Krishna, will teach Arjuna the spiritual knowledge for the accomplishment of the unique work in his hand. The self is indeed without beginning, middle, and end. Self is something which is Brahman, which is continuously there. It's not killed when the body is killed, and the eternal unborn, invariable and without birth and death. That's why Arjuna says to Krishna, or Krishna says to Arjuna, and that's what Vasistha says to Rama, Yogastha Kuru Karmani. Do the activities in a yoga way, being established. Sthaha means being established in yoga. Yogastha Kuru Karmani, Sangam Tyaktva Phalanicha. Attachment and the phala, both these things you give up. Sanyasta Sarva Sankalpaha. Sangam Tyaktva Phalanicha. Sanyasta Sarvasankalpaha Samaha Shantamana Bhava Tyagaha Sankalpa Jalanam Asangayati Katyate. Perform action are the duties established in yoga, having a renounced attachment and the desire for fruits, the resultant of such actions. Be equal in pleasure and pain, or tranquil mind, giving up all ideation or desires. The renunciation of the web of imagination desires is declared as non-attachment. The web of imagination, once that is given up, then it is called as the idea, and that kind of a thing is asangaha, non-attachment. Do the activity, but then, and doing an activity without any attachment is called as yogaha. Therefore, yogastha kuru karmani. And immediately that's why that original shloka from Yoga Vasistha says, Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. There it is, the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. But here she says, sangam tyaktva phalanicha. There are other shlokas which suggest that you give up the phala apeksha in the case of Bhagavad Gita, where he says that karmanya vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. That means you give up the phala. Here that's the same concept. He says, yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva phalanicha. Now what he says that give up the sangha with the phala. This is something very important. Because if you are doing any activity, you already have the activity designed to give a goal, particular goal. Yes, otherwise you don't do an activity. Like for example, I want to reach a place A to B, therefore I start journeying myself. That means I have a goal now to reach place B from place A. Similarly, I plan something, short plans and bigger plans and all those things to see that you have that. So therefore that this planning and scheming and doing all kinds of things is in the present, it's not in the future. So this karma phala that you are thinking is nothing but a extension of the karma itself. Whatever the karma is there, and its own extension, its own growth, development is what is the karma phala. It's like the way that you put the seed and the plant comes up, you water the plant and all that, and finally the plant gives us a fruit, gives out a flower. And that flower belongs to the plant. And whatever that the plant can give, the flower it gives. The flower comes as for the plant seed that you have planted, not as for your wish. Your wish has no role to play. The seed has a role to play. Put a right kind of a seed, that's all. You don't have any wish behind it. And then take care of that properly. When you properly take care of it, naturally the fruit comes. Naturally the flower comes, it flowers into that. So what happens is that when you have an attachment to the fruit or a flower, that means to say when you think that you want to get that, you are desiring to get that, then all this activity that you do not become like a journey. It becomes like a chore. It becomes like a huge effort that you have put behind it. Imagine that what is that effort that you have put behind it? It's a small little thing. You put the seed in the land, plant, and then you put some manure, you put some water. These are the small things that you have done. But other than that, how much the plant has done itself, how much the divinity has done behind it for the fruit to come, for the flower to come. It's extraordinary. So that your contribution in the whole thing is so minute. If you can understand that, then you don't have any attachment with the fruit. Fruit comes and then it spreads and then it goes to the people, but then fruit belongs to the tree, not to you. This concept is something which is extraordinary, Karma Yoga concept, it, where you become like a Sakshi witness. एष एव स्वभावत्मः जनैः पुर्याष्टकं स्मृतः ज्ञत्वा कर्तृत्व भोक्तृत्व साक्षित्वा अभिभाषितः ता संवित् जीव इत्युक्ता तद्विपुर्याष्टकं विदुः पुर्याष्टकवशेनैव स्वप्नात् स्वप्नतरं यथा असत्यमेव पश्यन्ति जनाः तद्वत् इदं जगत् अर्जुन विद्य निर्दुःखं सुखं क्षेपण जीवितं यमः करिष्यति तपोदमनात् पापशंख्या महीयं तेन निरंद्र मूर्तमूर्त्यो अमृतभिः मूर्त्यमर्त्यो अमृत्युभिः. The death and birth and all those things, and the person is established in something which is not undergoing the birth and death, not going to the journey towards the death. वासुदेव अर्जुनश्चेति तथा युद्धो उपस्थिते अर्जुनः स्वजनात् शत्रून् दृष्टैस्यपि विषण्णताम्. Lord Hari, there in the form of Rama, will incarnate on this earth as Vasudeva or Krishna. See, he can, as the son of Vasudeva and Krishna and Arjuna. And then when the battle between Arjuna and Krishna, kinsmen take place, Arjuna saying a kinsman standing as his enemies will fall into despondency. That cause for the despondency is that he sees them as his enemies. Bodhayishyate tam devaha prapya karyaika siddhitaha atma hyanat adi madhyastam hate dehe nahanyate shashvatoyam ajo nityo janma mrityu vivarjitaha. It's forever. Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva phalani cha sanyasta sarva sankalpaha samaha shantamana bhava tyagaha sankalpa jalanam asangam iti kathyate. Perform actions and duties established in yoga, yogastha kuru karmani, having renounced attachment and the desire for fruit are the result of the such action. Be equal in pleasure and pain, of tranquil mind, giving up all ideation desires. Renunciation of the web of imagination is declared as non-attachment. A few things that I would like to emphasize on that. One is that it is the imagination which brings about the dreams. Imagination, then we go into the dream world, we create a different world altogether to see that we take care of our imagination. But somebody who does not have this imagination, he doesn't have to do that. He's just doing the work totally in an absorbed way. He doesn't expect anything out of that other than whatever that the activity is supposed to give. When that is what he is doing it, then he doesn't have imagination to do that. So therefore, Jagaha sankalpa jalanam asangamiti kadyate. So, sanyasta sarva sankalpaha. In the beginning that we need to have sankalpa, but then afterwards we need to give up that sankalpa. See, at the level where we don't have even sankalpa, that means to say we are astray. We don't have any particular direction. We don't have any particular idea. And we cannot put anything in the path of training ourselves and developing ourselves. So essentially that we need a sankalpa to start with. But then afterwards we need to give up that sankalpa. That's why sanyasta sarva sankalpaha. Then only that samaha shantamanaha bhava. Then you become shantamana, peaceful mind bhava, and tyagaha sankalpa jalanam asangaha iti kathyate. A real asangatva is that sankalpas are completely given up. Tyaga means basically it happens to see that you rise above the level of sankalpa. You see, there is up to one level that you try to sankalpa, with the sankalpa you do the good. But at one point of time, then you don't have to have any sankalpa for doing good. Good naturally flows out of you, naturally becomes your own way of life. And that is what the real journey that we need to. Once that asanga is there developed, then you are free from all these things and you are peaceful. And that's what Arjuna has become. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji bam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktaiva as atmanam matparayanaha. Now here, this particular shloka, already we have seen Yogastha Kurkarmani is taken from Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, Manmana Bhav Madbhaktaha Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru, and this also taken from Bhagavad Gita. Mame Vaishyasi Yuktaiva Atmanam Matparayanaha. This also is like that. There are several shlokas picked up from the Bhagavad Gita in this chapter that we do. So it's actually revision of Bhagavad Gita in sub portions, selected shlokas in this. We'll see that what all the ideas that he has picked up and what is the way he guides Rama, Vasistha guides Rama by taking the example of Krishna and Arjuna in this particular chapter. We'll see it next time when we continue our discussion on Rama and Vasistha on the Arjuna Upakhyanam. Next time when we meet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.